We are getting some breaking news right now coming out from the ECB about liquidity measures. McKee's got that news for us. Mike?
Well, we have an announcement from the European Central Bank, Betty, that they're going to provide new 3-month loans to banks in dollars in cooperation with the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the Swiss National Bank, and the Bank of Japan. So coordinated international action to make dollars available to banks that may be having trouble funding themselves. So far, we don't have any evidence that that's the case, but there have been a lot of talk about banks in Europe having problems. BNP Paribas just put out a statement yesterday saying they didn't have a problem. They could get dollar loans. We know a lot of money market funds in the U.S. have stopped lending to European banks because they're concerned about their financial situation. And this may be a sign that the European Central Bank is getting a little nervous about whether these banks can fund themselves. And maybe they're coming at this with a very large package to try to let people know that there are dollars out there available. These banks will be able to get loans. It's a 3-month program from the European Central Bank. The Fed has swap lines in place with these banks to provide dollars to them if necessary. They were used once earlier this year. So far haven't been touched the same way they were back in 2008, but potentially a significant development for the health of the banks. Can't tell you much about whether they're going to need it or not yet, Betty.
Right, but Mike, does this tell you, though, that if the ECB and the other central banks are doing this, that perhaps the situation on liquidity, on the lending markets is worse than what has been let on?
Well, that's going to be the question for investors. Do they take this as a reassurance that the central banks are behind these banks and they feel they're okay, or do they take it as some sort of warning that there is a problem that we don't know about? That's the danger for an emergency lending program like this. At this point, there hadn't been any indication that banks can't get the money, at least not any official indication, but we have had these headlines from other banks, and it looks like the central banks around the world trying to get in front of that train.